Good morning. It is 8:38, and in the studio with me is our current councillor, Gary Sulz, who is running for mayor. Good morning, Gary.
Good morning, Sean. How are you?
I'm doing good. Well, thanks for coming in so that we can have a chat about your decision to try to grab that brass ring. With that said, you've had 4 years on council. What have been your highlights and your lowlights for you in the 4 years?
The highlights, I think, are just being able to assist progress in the community. The lowlights are being challenged on my decisions after the fact on the street, or watching my wife being challenged on things that I've made decisions on.
Yeah, I could see that being hard for family members that are not necessarily a part of the decision. It seems to me, I could be wrong, but it seems to me that when big decisions are made, somehow it always lands on what is Gary going to do? Why does that happen, Gary? What goes on in there?
I'm the quiet one. I think I sit back and I watch what others do and listen to the debate. And then I'll base my decision on my personal convictions plus the debate that's going on. And so it's always, I might change my mind. I might go in with something going like, no, I think this is straightforward. And one of the other councillors will come up with something that makes total sense that I hadn't thought of. And so you have to look at both sides of that to make that decision.
Now, sitting on council, when you make a decision that changes from where your original stance was, do you find that there's a huge blowback that is unnecessary in terms of, we'll use the mall. We know that was a big decision and that was a big source of controversy, but you had your reasons and a lot of people threw it at you. Well, he made everyone put their hand up at that thing. And I thought there's got to be more to it than just the hands up that day.
Yeah, no, the hands up really had nothing to do with it. My question really was, do you want to see development in the community? Put your hand up. People put their hands up. That was that question in itself. Had really not too terribly much to do with the mall. And I've gone over this mall thing time and time again, both in the media and with people on the street. I think the decision was a positive decision for the community. We're still seeing development. We're seeing the proper development in my mind up on that property, and we're seeing the tourists stay in town. Every time I see a row of motorhomes along Victoria, I'm grinning from ear to ear because these people are now staying in the community. They're not just stopping and carrying on.
Now, being that you've been here for a very long time, you've seen lots of changes over the years from... You were here during the enhancement?
Yep. 2 or 3 different versions of that enhancement I think I've helped contribute to pay for on Mackenzie Avenue over the years.
So you've seen lots of those changes. Where do you think Revelstoke needs to be in, call it, 5 years' time?
Well, I think we need to have some planned neighborhoods. We need to look at, what kind of development we're going to have in certain areas of the community. We need to get some of our documentation complete so we know where we're at. So the OCP, those sorts of things will need to be brought up to today's standards, today's thoughts. And I think from there, we just go forward. Sometimes we've been reactive with development that's come to us. And when I mean that, it's the developers that come and saying, I need this project here. I need this project here. And we might have to look at it and say, this is what the community's decided we need in this neighborhood or this neighborhood and that neighborhood. And I see that sort of thing being part of the process.
Have we looked at other communities' OCP plans to see if it sort of fits in the rhythm of what we should be because we're in similar nature to them? Call it Fernie or Cranbrook or any of the smaller towns that also have the same type of tourism that we have and also have the backbone, which is the rail yard as well as the mill and forestry industry, where we can go, well, I can see where they've taken this and it's something that we should be implementing.
Well, I think the staff have actually looked at that over the years, and there's been people that put in the existing OCP years ago that spent an incredible amount of time basing their decisions on what's going on in the province or what's needed here for the community. So at this point in time now, it'll be just updating those sorts of things to bring it up to speed. Do we look at other communities to see what they're doing? Absolutely. There's no sense in reinventing the wheel. Let's look at things that are working in other communities and let's implement them if that's possible. And do we want to discount anything? No, I think you need to look at everything overall and say, hey, this might work here or this will work here, and let's see how we can bring that sort of thing into play.
Now, right now, we're talking a lot about DCCs because it's the hot topic in all of the media outlets, and it's just what we can talk about. It's relevant as of right now. And then there'll be something, if memory serves me, the Big Eddy Water was a big discussion some time ago, and around we go. There'll be something new every quarter.
That's correct.
With that said, as we move into the new council, this DCC thing will pop back up on the table. I'm certain of it.
Yep. We're going to have to relook at that. We'll have to re-engage the community, see how they're feeling, and engage in a way where we're listening to what they have to say, and then start putting some figures to paper. We know what the costs are. And the longer we delay this, the higher the costs get, which means the higher the DCCs are going to be. So now we need to look at it. Is it going to be a development cost charge that's going to have to increase? It's going to be a taxation charge that's going to be, or is it going to be some other fee? So we're going to need to look at that. And unfortunately, if we don't have growth, we don't need to have these things. If we have growth, absolutely. We need to deal with the sewage treatment plant. We need to deal with infrastructure and water. Those sorts of things will all need to be dealt with. And so what is it that spurs that? Is it the development, or is it the fact that we just need to replace because we're maintaining? And that's what we need to deal with.
Now, Kevin Costner, once the very deep and wisdom-filled Kevin Costner, said, if you build it, they will come. Actually, technically, that was Ray Liotta, but still everyone references Kevin Costner in that. But we build it, where are they going to come to? Because one of the issues that we've talked about time and time again is there isn't a place for people to have a growing family. But when are we going to stop and go, you know what? There's families like me, and I'll use me as an example because I don't want to use anyone else, that make roughly $45,000 to $50,000 a year. There's not a lot of banks that are going to give you a pretty decent amount of money for a mortgage with that income, even if you are awesome like me and you save your money. The problem is, at the rate houses are in this town, you can't buy anything where it doesn't need a lot of work. So you're stuck. Where do we go from where we're already at? This is what we need for growing families. When you started out with Chrissy way back in the day, did you buy the home that you are currently living in now?
Absolutely not. We bought, just like you, an old fixer-upper, and we had to spend considerable amount of money over the years to make that livable. I think we've already reached that point, Shaun, where it's not sustainable to carry on in the condition that we're carrying on, where young families can't afford. So we need to kind of look at how are we going to develop housing that's affordable. And so that goes down to costs. This is where the balance of DCCs plays into the role. If you're going to build a neighborhood, there's going to be DCCs. What's affordable? It's really going to be a tough thing for council to deal with. We're going to have to balance those things. We're going to have to look to the community, and we're actually going to have to ask the development community to come up with some ideas. And this is what we're thinking. What are you thinking? How can we reach something so that we can make everything work for the community? It's going to be a tough go, but we're up for that challenge.
851, Shaun Aquiline here, and sitting across from me is Councillor Gary Sulz, who is going to share with us why he decided to throw his name into the hat as mayor and not as another round in council. Gary, so I'm going to let you take the lead on this one.
Well, thanks for that question, Shaun. I've been thinking about this for quite a while. I think my leadership style or my management style lends me well to that position as mayor. I like to empower others, building them up and building teams. So I think that it was a natural fit for me. Sitting on the council table, you're more reactive to the things around you, even though there's camaraderie amongst the group. I just thought this would work well for me, and I'm up for that challenge.
Now, with that comes a very new challenge yet again, because with Aaron and Gary stepping down for personal reasons, that sort of leaves everyone at the table to be green. How are you feeling about taking that on with a whole new batch?
Well, it's going to be some meetings as to how we do process. The city staff have already set something up where we'll go into a training session before we even start our inaugural meeting. and get some basics down. And it's about building teamwork and showing what governance does versus running the city. City council provides governance for the staff to run the city, so it's not the other way around. So it's providing that guidance and that leadership in that role going forward. So as long as we can get those basics down, then I think we can build upon that.
Now, speaking of leadership, this is a question because I actually don't know. When you were first on council and Mark as the mayor, did he delegate which departments you guys would sort of work with?
Yes, and he asked to some degree, what do you feel comfortable with? And so some of us would basically say, this is, my bailiwick. I have this experience. And so it wasn't just delegating. And in some points he had to place us in places because he needed people. But in other ones, it's like, okay, where do we go from here?
Now, of course, I'm not going to ask you this because I don't think it's right to do. It's your business. But have you looked at, and I'm sure you have, those running and that you would think about if they were to be elected, where you think that they would be best placed?
Well, some of that's gone through my mind. I haven't nailed down everybody as to who's going to be where or how that's going to transition. And I think it's premature to do that. We need to let the election process happen and then work from there.
Are there certain individuals that you could see, and again, I won't ask, that you could see as a real asset to the community and the city moving forward?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Is there anything in the time of the 4 years that you've been on that you made a choice, or as a collective group or individually, that you were really proud of that moment, or you regret that moment?
No, I can't say either way. I guess I was proud of the fact that the mall didn't go through in the way that it was going to go through, only because it was not the right time. Not necessarily the right project, just not the right time in my mind. Having said that, I originally voted for that thinking that, no, it would be good. And then once you hear what the developers were going to bring in, that sort of thing, it was like, yeah, I don't think that's going to work. And so that frustrated people on both sides. So that was where it was controversial. When I look at the time on council, sometimes we made decisions where I would go in thinking, okay, this is a positive, and it might have got voted down, and you look at it. So the whole idea of making those decisions is whatever decisions are made, that's what we basically go with. So if somebody says no to the new bathroom in the mall, and we're going like, no, all of us wanted that, but it was voted down, and you say, no, that was council's decision, that's it, end of story, and just carry on.
Speaking of a developer, perhaps from out of town, we'll use the mall as an example. Does the city, and do we look at their previous projects like a resume and look into how well it went and where it's at, wherever they've built elsewhere, to see if we think this is a good fit for the community?
Well, I think we do. We may not do that in the public realm, but we're going to look at that developer and say, they've done some good things, or some of the things that they've done haven't worked so well. And if they haven't worked well, then we're going to need to find out why. And that's having that conversation with them.
Now, you've been here so long that you know all about the rumor stoke. And I think sometimes decisions in the public sector are based on facts that we hear, and they get convoluted and then passed around, and it's like telephone, right?
Yep.
With that said, I've always heard people truly believe that there was going to be either a mini Walmart, a Canadian Tire, and a Home Depot up there. Now, when I asked that developer, he said no. Do you know that what I heard is correct in regards to having anything of that substance, meaning Canadian Tire? Because I was always informed no. You could see where someone go, why wouldn't we want that? What is true and what we hear through the rumor stoke is two very different things.
If I recall correctly, I think Mark McKee reached out to Canadian Tire and point blank asked them that question. And the comment was, no, we're not coming. We weren't coming. End of story on that. The development that we heard was a grocery store pharmacy coming. And I have a son that's in grocery, so he basically told me how that system works. It wasn't beneficial to our community.
Now, Gary, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think is really important for the community moving forward to know about you that you haven't had a chance to shed light on because the opportunity hasn't come up?
I don't most people in this community who've been here for a while know who I am. So for those who don't know, I've been a funeral director most of my life. I've been a funeral director in this community 34 years. In addition to that, I served 10 years on the RCMP Auxiliary with their program in the 90s, and then served in the past 4 years with Emergency Social Services, so where we assist people who are devastated by fire, flood, or that sort of thing. And then, of course, being on council. So I've got a wide range of service to this community over many, many years, and I'm proud of that.
I have one final question that's a little bit tricky, but you'll answer it because you're Gary. Now, everyone loves to know whether or not there's a conflict of interest in the table. Now, there is a contract, I believe, with the city and yourself or through business where there's an income or there's a transfer of dollars.
Yep. There's an ESS contract with the city and my holding company. That contract ends October 31st and will not be renewed.
Now, with you being on council, was that still active prior to? And is that a conflict, or is there sort of, we are in a small town, there's bound to be some crossover. Was that a huge issue? Did it come up? Was it more of a, well, we need a funeral service, or, is that part of it?
Well, it wasn't anything to do with the funeral service. It had everything to do with emergency services.
Oh, okay.
So that basically meant that there was no one else that wanted that position. So they put it in. It was my holding company that held that position. I was just an employee of that holding company. I did that work. So that kind of keeps me at arm's length, and that's the legal ramifications of that. The end result was, no one else wants to do the job. It needs to be dealt with. So I'm on call 24/7, and I have been for 40 years. So for me, getting up in the middle of the night to help people in a devastating time was a natural progression for me.
Okay.
So,
I just wanted to bring that up just to clarify that if anyone gets really bored and wants to read check requisition reports like I do. So
absolutely.
Thanks for clearing that up, Gary. And Gary, if anyone has specific questions that they would like to ask you, I know you've got a city email, but it's probably better to get a hold of you on your private one. So how do people get in touch with you?
Yep. So that email address is glsulz. So that's GLSULZ @telus.net. And I can be reached on my cell phone, 250-837-8629.
Well, we've been chatting with Councillor Sulz, who has tossed his name in to become our next mayor, and you will be able to hear more from him on Tuesday, October the 2nd, at the All Candidates Forum. Thanks, Gary, for coming in and sharing a little bit more about
Sean.
you.
Appreciate it.